Remember that the Constitution was developed because the Articles of Confederation had failed. So the primary problem with the Articles was that the national government couldn't tax, which meant that they couldn't actually do anything. But that wasn't the only problem with the Articles of Confederation. The Articles didn't give the national government any sort of supreme authority over the states. Remember, at the time of the founding, each of the states was effectively its own country. And so the states wanted to give up as little power as possible to the national government. And so they made a very weak national government. But this led to a problem. The states could just ignore national law. The national government had no military, no police force. It didn't even have courts. So states just did whatever they wanted to do. But this changed with the Constitution and the Supremacy Clause. Here's what the Supremacy Clause says in Article 6 of the Constitution. This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made, under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. And what this means is that when there's a conflict between a state law and a national law, the national law wins. And when there's a conflict between a state law or state constitution and the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Constitution wins. This is why it's called the Supremacy Clause. It says that the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and the national government is supreme over state governments. The important thing about the Supremacy Clause is that it states the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That's important to remember. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. You need to remember that. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. This means that all other laws are judged against the Constitution. This is why laws can be thrown out if they're unconstitutional or found to be by the Supreme Court. A law that goes against the Constitution is an invalid law. It can't be allowed. This is true for national laws and state laws. So if a state passes a law that goes against the U.S. Constitution, then the state law is invalid. This means the U.S. Constitution is supreme over state laws and state constitutions. So if a state tried to create a treaty with a foreign nation, that state treaty would be thrown out by the Supreme Court because it goes against the Constitution, which says that making treaties is a national power in our federal system. If the legislature or president takes some action that goes against the Constitution, it will be thrown out. This is why public officials take an oath to uphold the Constitution. If you enlist in the military, you will swear or solemnly affirm to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Even the president takes an oath of office to preserve and protect and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Constitution of the United States.
So remember, the Supremacy Clause states that the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. No national or state or local law can go against the Constitution. All other laws are judged by the standard of the Constitution. And if the Constitution gives priority or preference to the national government, making the national government stronger than the states. So if there's a conflict between a state and the national government wins, so long as the national government is staying within the bounds of the U.S. Constitution.